Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Midweek with Meaning. This is Angela Ward. I'm a registered nurse, transformational coach, and CEO of Guardian at the Gateway, where we help people to journey inward and return renewed, going through that wildness of rebirth to come into a place of wholeness, completion. This is a show that I do weekly. Addressing topics that have come up for me personally or have come up in relation with my clients or just in the general world, what things people are talking about these days. And so I'm really happy to craft this to you and things that you're interested in hearing more about. But if you're new to Midweek with Meaning, please say hello. If you're watching live, you can leave a comment. I can see that from that. I'd love to know where you're watching from. And if this is a replay for you, please put replay in the comments. That would be great. It feels really bright in here to me. Oh, there, that's a little better. Anyway, today we are going to talk about a personal code of ethics. And I'm really engaged in this topic right now because it is part of a training course that I'm in. I'm in the Synthesis Institute's psychedelic practitioners training, and we've spent some time developing our own personal code of ethics. Now, a code of ethics is not new to me because as a nurse, there are some very clear codes of ethics that we use and we rely on. But it let me think that many of us carry a set of personal ethics that we don't really necessarily have in our conscious forethought. So I wanted to have this conversation to stimulate you to bring your ethical orientation into your more conscious awareness as a personal North Star and a guide. So first of all, of course, what are ethics? That is such a great question. So there's a couple different ways we can think about it. Most people, I believe, when they first hear the word ethics, they think about it being a sense of morality, and may even consider that moral sense related to good and bad that was perhaps instilled as a more from a religious perspective. Like, gosh, I've heard the expression having a Protestant work ethic, for example. So there can be some orientation that way, that it's related to a religious sense of morality. But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is more of that desire to show up in the world with a sense of integrity that helps you to feel like you are operating from a grounded sense of place and the way that you'd want to interact in the world. So one thing that I read is this, that ethics is about consciousness, relationship, and willingness to truly care for oneself and others, which I think is a really beautiful way to put it. It's about that conscious awareness and about how to be in right relationship. So one thing I wanted to share is a guiding light for me in this work is by this work by Kalia Taylor, The Ethics of Caring, Finding Right Relationship with Clients for Practicing Professionals, Students, Teachers, and Mentors. If you work with people in any capacity, I would highly recommend checking this book out. It's so, so good. So, kind of why Why is it important for us to consider our personal ethics? This is another quote from Kylie Taylor, that what I do not know about myself can unintentionally cause you harm. I think that we have seen more and more of this understanding over the last year, particularly as the Black Lives Matter movement has become much more of a widespread conversation, and the ways in which um, people of privilege are being asked to look at the ways in which we don't know what we don't know about ourselves are unintentionally harming others. So I think the time is ripe for us to be considering this. I like that. I like that explanation. And the other thing that's really lovely about ethics is it provides a framework for understanding and interpreting right and wrong in society, or in the self. And I'm not asking for right and wrong, like good and bad, like you should be in a shaming place necessarily, but because this isn't about developing a sense of right and wrong that makes you cringe or be in fear or be resistant. This is more about coming from a place of love and groundedness, as I said at the beginning. So, what are some other reasons we might want to develop a personal code of ethics? I'm going to read from Kylie Taylor's book here real quick, where she says, one moment. Some of the incentives for expanding your ethical awareness include increasing self-knowledge, which is absolutely the greatest place to start. Let's begin there. It is for increasing ease in all kinds of discussions around ethical issues. So having developed a kind of personal sense of where we are, where we stand in these things, makes it a little easier to have the conversation. It doesn't have to be such a combative situation. It can be like, well, this is the framework that I've come to for a reason, examining the reasons for why you feel the way that you do. It helps us to perhaps avoid unethical decisions, or when we're coming to a situation where we have to make a decision, it gives us a framework to make ones that are more in alignment and integrity with our own personal values. And it can also help us help others develop a sense of how they might be in a more ethical way of relating. So I think that's really helpful, really, really helpful. So for me, I wanted to share with you, in the work that I do, I have an ongoing practice. I have my ongoing code of ethics that I've been developing for some time, and it's pulled from many sources. Um, and it's still a draft for sure, but I wanted to share with you what I have. So I strive to be aware of my own belief systems, my values, my needs, and my limitations. How those things affect my work, my life, and my relationships. I recognize as I examine these things that the potential for vulnerability of myself and the potential vulnerability of other people that I am in relationship with. And I firmly disavow any manipulation or exploitation of those vulnerable places. Thank you, Ava, for giving me that language right there. I strive to practice with compassion and respect for the people that cross my path. There's so much more there. My work is also drawn from the American Nurses Association Code of Ethics, which I think is a really robust code of ethics. So if you're in a professional environment, likely your profession has a well-developed code of ethics, which I think are a really nice place to jump off to be like, yeah, that really resonates with me, or does not. It gives you a place to look. Another place where I've, excuse me, really developed my view of ethics has been through the Code of Ethics for Spiritual Guides for the Council on Spiritual Practices. So here's the link to that. I know it's kind of long, but if you go to csp.org, you can read their Code of Ethics, which I think is a really, really lovely one. Let me see if I still have it up here, if I can read you a few. Oh, I don't at the moment. Generally, this is for people that are working as guides. And in the work that I do with ketamine-assisted therapy, I really am guiding people through their path of healing. And this helps give me an articulated viewpoint. There's another one that I love that's specifically around psychedelic work, and that is the North Star Ethics Pledge. This is one that you can read and share. You can even sign it. Some of the great things about it, I'll just give you an example of their principles. To start within, I pledge to ground my work in the field with work on myself and to treat personal growth as a lifelong process. Love it. Another principle, number 2, is to study the traditions. I pledge to grow my knowledge of the history of psychedelics and their many traditions of use in a good faith effort to appreciate both the potential of these substances and the conflicts and complexities surrounding them. Their third pledge is to build trust. I pledge to invest in building trust in my relationships across the psychedelic field and repair trust where possible. So they also speak to equality and justice, which I think is very important, and the idea of paying it forward. So as you can see, there are so many opportunities to develop this working language and a personal orientation to help you get clear about what matters to you and how you want to show up in the world. A few other little pieces I'd like to share. Which one did I highlight here? Oh, I definitely said what I do not know about myself can unintentionally cause you harm. But this one I really like, also from Kylia Taylor. So we develop a code of ethics, right? And then what? And then what? So maybe we have this little piece of paper, and I'm sure we've all worked in different environments where there's this mission and vision statement on the wall of your employer's building. But how do we take those perspectives and actually put them into action? How do we embody those beliefs? And I think one way is to keep it in the forefront of our mind. There's one thing here that says, ethics is the process by which we sort out what best creates inner and outer harmony in our lives and in the lives of those we care for. Ding, ding, ding. She also says, so when we talk about putting these into action, we're talking about ethical behavior, right? Ways that we might want to behave and engage in the world at large. So Kylia Taylor says, ethical behavior stems from the internal congruency and harmony between our values and our actions, between the value we have of wanting to do our best and our actual willingness to bring our best awareness and skills to that task. So this speaks like that's so crucial to have that aligned integrity, right? Between what determined is our compass and then how willing are we to actually step into that space of doing our best or bringing those ethical codes into action in our lives. So what might this mean? Perhaps we might have a value. I think value might be an easier way to speak of ethics, things that we value as important. So perhaps you value honesty. While we may believe that it's harmonious to not have conflict, sometimes in relationship, and that is where ethics in practice shows up in relationship, something occurs that maybe out of alignment with our values, and also without speaking to it, you can maintain the harmony. So let's say you're dedicated to honesty or truth telling, that it might be really crucial in those times where you're getting rubbed up against your values to actually create a little disharmony in order to speak to that deeper value. I hope that makes some sense. So I'm trying to think of a situation I could describe that would be helpful. I have been in situations, for example, I was at I work as a nurse at festivals, and sometimes people come in with some really challenging situations, and it can be hard to remember that these are autonomous people with rights and sovereignty, their body sovereignty. We had a situation where this person was really struggling. This person had been struggling for a while, and it became uncertain if this person was actually moving into a medical crisis versus a psychedelic mental crisis. And she was getting really combative, and the response of the crew was to hold her down and give this person an injection of some medicine to essentially knock her out, which was super distressing. Actually, I feel a lot of distress sharing this with you because it was really an upsetting situation. And the thing that was so hard was that it kind of escalated into this situation where she was getting more combative. So the people around her were getting more resistant, and it started building and building. And the lead wanted to give her this injection and asked us to just give them a needle so they could drop the medicine. And rather than taking the time to switch the needle that you drop the medicine with into an injecting needle, because the drawing needle is actually quite large, this person just took the needle that they drew the medicine up and injected this person with that needle, a red. And for those nurses in the crew, there was just the red draw needle in her butt, and she screamed at the top of her lungs. I mean, it was absolutely super, super traumatizing, really upsetting that was just the action that had happened. And one of the things about healthcare is we do debriefs in difficult situations like that. So there is a kind of built-in opportunity for us to have a disharmonious experience in order to be more aligned with our values and our code of ethics. So after this happened, we were able to huddle, and I brought up how I felt it was really wrong that we'd used this needle on this person, and that there was, it wasn't escalating. It wasn't like a life or death situation. But because we had a framework of an ethical code to work within, it wasn't like I was criticizing that person for being a bad person. It was like calling that person back into alignment with our agreed upon code of ethics. Does that make sense? I hope that makes a little sense. That's a really extreme situation, right? That's a really extreme situation. But there are plenty of times where perhaps we see these things happen, and it might be appropriate to speak up or to engage in a way that helps front the ways in which we call one another to treat one another better. I hope that makes sense. I think the responses to all of the police brutality towards Black people is really appropriate. And this isn't about a conversation about breaking windows or breaking, harming property. This isn't about that. This is about people feeling outraged at the loss of life and the brutality. And I think that that's really important to recognize, that sometimes people are disrupting the harmony in order to speak to their values and what they think are the appropriate ways to care for one another. So I think this is a really rich territory, and there's a lot to do here, right? There's a lot to do here. So I would invite you this week to start contemplating what are perhaps some of your hidden personal ethics that you haven't really thought about much, some of those personal values, those things that you really want to amplify in your life, that you want to stand behind and that you feel really good about. Um, and I'd really like to encourage you to maybe start writing them down and start reading some other codes of ethics, seeing if your profession has one, or looking at some other professional code of ethics and hearing language that resonates with you and excites you. Because I think it's really important. If we can raise the bar of how we treat one another that's grounded in an ethical framework, I think it could really create some lovely, lovely relationships together in the way that we engage and relate to one another. So that's what I have for you today. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. So if you're watching in any of the places where I do this streaming, please post in the comments maybe some ethical orientations that really matter to you that you want to share. And I look forward to reading them. Maybe this can be a really robust conversation. All right, my loves, thank you so much for watching today. If you're watching on YouTube, would you please subscribe to my channel? I've never asked that before, but you know how to do it. And you'll get information if I post interesting things, or who knows. And remember that this is for you. So if there's topics that are interesting you that you'd like to have deeper conversations around, you'd like me to research some more, I would love to do that for you. So blessings for the rest of your day. I'll see you back here next week. Bye.